Do you sometimes feel like there's an inner critic in your head telling you that you're not enough, that you're not doing good enough, that you said something stupid, that you mess up, that maybe you're not smart enough, that you're not pretty enough, that you're not good looking enough, that you're not charismatic enough, that maybe people don't like you enough? Well, here's the good news. Everybody feels that way. We all have an inner critic, and its job is to tell us that we're not enough, and it thinks it's keeping us safe. I thought I could get that inner critic to quiet down and go away. I was wrong. That inner critic is here to stay. Expert on dethroning your inner critic, Joanna Kleinman, joins us today to teach us how to live with this inner critic, accept it, welcome it, and then shift all those thoughts, because the truth is you are absolutely enough. You are totally beautiful, smart, and capable exactly as you are. And all we have to do is recognize when this critic is taken over and then turn it around. We're going to learn all about it in just a few minutes. Let's rock. Welcome to the Good Mood Revolution. I'm your host, Matt O'Neill, and I've spent the last 15 years mastering the art of lasting happiness. Look, happiness isn't just a feeling, it is a skill, and it's a skill that you can learn and master. This show is your training ground. Let your Good Mood Revolution begin now. So just this morning, I'm reading the book, The Artist's Way, and Julia Cameron teaches us how to get rid of the critical thoughts that show up and prevent us from being an artist. It is her hypothesis that we are all creative and that we all have this wonderful creative ability within us. However, there's this person, the critic, that listens to every new original idea we have that doesn't fit inside the box of what our critic thinks is the norm and says, oh, that's stupid. And so Julia this morning, as I'm reading, said the way to get over the critic is to write and write and write and write as silly things as you can, anything. She calls it stream of consciousness writing. And she said, you do it so much that the critic just kind of gives up and says, all right, I'm not going to criticize everything you do because there is some brilliance that's coming from all of this freeform writing. And I just thought it was awesome because I certainly have an inner critic. And it is judging everything I'm doing, and you have an inner critic. Julia's take is that this is our survival logical brain, and that it always wants to keep us safe. And what is safe? Safe is doing things that won't draw unnecessary attention to us. But that's not how we're going to live our biggest life, by not drawing attention to ourselves. One of my favorite quotes, I can't remember who said it, said, we could live a super safe life and then just not be noticed by anyone, and then slink into our graves without ever causing any waves. And I think, boy, that's a poor way to live. So today we're talking with probably the world's foremost expert on how to dethrone your inner critic. Joanna Kleinman is joining us, and she has a podcast called Dethroning Your Inner Critic, a best-selling book by the same name. She is a psychotherapist, and she also coaches people on how to quiet this inner critic. So Joanna, welcome to Good Mood Revolution.
I am so excited to be here, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming. I can't wait to quiet down this silly critical voice. It's always telling me that it's not enough and it's not good and people aren't going to like it.
Well, I've got some news for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
We can't quiet it, which is what most people want to do.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I think we need to talk about today, because that's where people get really frustrated. They want to quiet it. They want to get rid of it. They want to eliminate it. And my work is kind of the polar opposite of that, because believe it or not, in what you were talking about, when we start doing our most important work, when we step outside of our comfort zone, when we actually start taking steps towards what we really want our life to be, our inner critic gets louder, not quiet.
That son of a gun.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it was the process for me. And they told, as I was writing my book, there would be times when I'd feel really great, like, oh, this is going amazing.
Yep.
And then there'd be times I'd think, this is total garbage. Everything's bad.
Right. For sure.
And then there'd be other times I'd say, you know what, actually, it's all right. And then other times I'd just fall into the abyss of nobody's going to like this. And it's,
Oof.
this is this inner
Quite
critic.
Quite familiar.
And it was the biggest obstacle to starting the Good Mood Revolution podcast.
Sure.
Was that fear, that critic saying, who are you to go and talk about feeling good? You don't always feel good. You get bad moods. Who are you to talk about being in good moods, right?
That's right. Yes.
So I know you've developed the MIND method. And, the M is meet your inner critic.
Yes.
So let's invite the listener to meet their inner critic.
Okay. So the thing is, our inner critic is formed out of our first experience of shame. And there is no human being that escapes some version of shame. And it's really that first feeling that we have when we're really, really little, where we're just not okay, right? Something, we're embarrassed, we're caught off guard, we feel like the rug has been pulled out from under us. And most people, again, we can go back to parts of our survival mechanism, want us to avoid the pain of that, okay? Meeting your inner critic is about your willingness when you're triggered in your life right now, right? You're about to launch this podcast for the first time and your inner critic is screaming at you, who the hell are you? You get into moods, you can't do this. To really understand on a very intimate level, where is that coming from? What is that really, right? Not just what does my inner critic say to me? Why is it saying this? How long has it been saying this? Who triggers it? What triggers it? And what's really underneath why that voice keeps circulating in my head over and over and over? So meeting your inner critic is really to understand whatever your thought is now that's making you uncomfortable about this podcast, or how dare she say that to me, or I'm going to lose my job, or whatever it is, that we all had the same version of this, right? When we were 10, something happened to trigger that button. And when we were 22, something happened to trigger that button. And when we were 38, something happened to trigger that button. And it's the same button that keeps getting triggered. And it's not, we think it's about the circumstance that's in front of us. Oh my God, I'm going to launch this podcast, or I've lost my job, or I'm getting a divorce. It is our thoughts about the circumstance, not the circumstance itself, that is causing our suffering.
The wait is finally over. The Good Mood Revolution book is officially available for pre-order on Amazon today. You can go to Amazon and look for Good Mood Revolution book. And in this book, you're going to find the 8 bad moods that get in the way of your happiness. You're going to learn strategies on how to overcome each of these 8 negative thoughts. They're all lies anyway. And then what the thought patterns are that make us happy every single day. You're also going to learn strategies that can make you really feel fulfilled in your life and make other people around you feel fulfilled as well. So go on Amazon, look for Good Mood Revolution book, and order yours today. Julia's recommendation this morning as I was reading that book was for her, she pictures this inner critic as a snake, a serpent.
Yes.
And she recommends to create a picture. She said it could be a shark. She said it could be a picture of mom.
Yes.
Right? Because maybe mom was the one that was always saying you weren't doing enough, or dad was the one always saying that you weren't doing enough.
Yep.
And she said, whatever the inner critic is saying seems so real and important in the moment. And she said, I want you to know something. It's never true.
Yes. So I tell people to give your inner critic a name. But here's the thing. We're never getting rid of this inner critic. So if we call that inner critic demon or snake or, bitch or whatever, okay? I mean, we can, right? But really, our inner critic first was formed, and this is going to sound like, how is this even possible? But our inner critic was formed to try to protect us. And so the reason why not, I refer to it as she, obviously you'd refer to him as he, or maybe she, I don't know, right? We can look it up.
Yeah, we'll stick with it. We'll stick with he.
But like for my inner critic, she is always, every time I'm at the bottom of the next mountain, right? The next thing I want to create, the next place I want to take my life, or maybe something with my kids, or, it hits me in a lot of different areas. She's just trying to protect me. So my inner critic's name is Worrying Wilhelmina.
Worrying Wilhelmina. Yeah, that's cute. That's someone I could relate to.
Yeah, right?
She seems protective. She's just worrying. She's just worried about you.
That's right, right? She's not, it feels like our inner critic is out to hurt us and rip us apart. And,
Well, same thing with mom or dad, right? Mom or dad telling us no, or that we weren't good enough, or that wasn't good enough. They wanted the best for us too.
Yes.
Maybe they didn't want us to get embarrassed and fall on our face or whatever. And so they told us not to do certain things, and they were trying to protect us, even if the protection didn't help us.
Yes. And along the lines of what you're talking about, what's also fascinating to understand is that our parents often parented us from their own inner critic.
Of course.
Right. And listen, I have 3 kids, I look back, man, I wish I had more of this information. My oldest is 22 and my youngest is 16. So my 16-year-old is definitely getting a different version of me than my 22-year-old did. And, my 20-year-old, right? 2022 and 16.
I remember when I first started dating Katie, if I wore any kind of color, she would give me like a nose wrinkle.
Right.
And I'd be like, "Oh, you don't like this?" And I'd say, "Well, help me pick something out." And she would always pick out, like, I've got navy. She'd always pick out something gray or navy.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to notice that Katie always wanted to look in a way that never drew attention.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And this was her inner critic, and I don't know where it came from, but somewhere along the lines,
right,
being different or not fitting in with the norm of society was a painful thing for her. So she decided that we were always just going to fit in with what looked like the norm of society. And I haven't been that way. I've been somebody that's totally okay being completely different and standing out and whatever, being a peacock in the world. And what's great now is Katie's starting to wear more color, and I'm having an influence on her. She's having an influence on me. It's how marriages work.
For sure.
And it's fun. It's fun to see her opening up and being more okay with things not looking so perfect or put together all the time. Because and let's say somebody does judge us.
Mm-hmm.
That's on them.
Yes, and that's true. Of course it's on them. It's right. But see, the problem here is that our inner critics are always doing the tango with each other, right? So we could say, oh, well, that's on them, right? But if you have had, let's say, your inner critic came about because you felt stupid. Okay, let's just take that as an example.
Yeah.
Like something happened, you were in kindergarten and something happened and you felt stupid. You may use that as fuel to become
really smart,
really smart,
really successful,
right?
Yep.
And we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but there is a cost to that, right? What the very thing that fueled us to our success can also be the thing that gets in the way now of our peace, our joy, our gratitude, our fulfillment.
This absolutely was my story.
Yes.
So I wasn't given approval from my dad.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I felt really afraid of him. He was crazy. And my mom would protect me, and she always praised me when I did well in school.
Yes.
So I felt more protected, more safe from my dad if I was performing well. And then I felt more loved too, right? Like I got this praise if I performed well. And so then I had this wound of I'm not okay unless I'm performing.
That's right.
Which then massive performance, right?
Of course.
And I went out in the work world and I performed super well. And I'm like trying to prove that I'm lovable. I didn't know it. I didn't know that was...
It's all unconscious. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm succeeding and succeeding and succeeding, trying to fill this void of not feeling lovable as I am.
Yes.
And all this success came, and yet happiness didn't. Because I was still feeling, there was still a wound of feeling unlovable that no amount of success could ever fill.
That's right. And that message gets perpetuated in the culture that we live in. It's actually been around us for generations upon generations. And now you add social media to that, right?
Or car commercials. Like,
for sure.
This luxury car, as soon as you have this, then you'll be somebody.
That's
because
right.
You're not somebody right now.
No.
Without it. You need this. You need that big shiny house, and then you'll be worthwhile.
Yeah, this perfect body, right?
Yes.
Perfect relationship.
Or the perfect children. Yeah, the perfect children. Look at my vacations. Look at what I ate last night for dinner. It was, I'm out having so much fun.
Yeah.
And my life is so fun. Yeah. So I deleted all social media from my phone.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
And I did it, and it's been months. So of course,
amazing.
We use social media in our business, and I can get on to social media from my computer.
Yeah.
But it's not every moment, because I would find myself in a loop. I would go check my email, then I'd go to the internet and check the Detroit sports pages, and then I'd go to my social media apps one at a time, and I had like a certain loop.
Yes.
And it was multiple times a day. I would do this every single day, multiple times a day.
Right.
And I just, I saw that movie, The Social Dilemma.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And when I saw that movie, and I was like, oh my gosh, my whole life is being consumed by AI. Absolutely. They are controlling my thoughts.
Yes.
I'm like, I got to get away from AI. So I deleted all the apps. I think it's been 4 months. I haven't missed them at all. What I'm doing is I'm having more life.
Well, there you go.
Like more real, authentic, actual connection instead of fake connection. It's been amazing.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So this is our inner critic, and social media perpetuates the inner critic, because social media feeds on the inner critic. Of course, it's like everyone else is doing all of these great things. Everyone else is succeeding, because all they do is that you go on and you post the awards you just got, or the wonderful time you just had, or the vacation you just took. That's the only time you're posting is the cool stuff you're doing. So then all you see is everyone doing cool stuff, and you're like, my life isn't as cool as that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that is definitely, that's a huge catalyst for the inner critic, right? But the thing is, Matt, that, first of all, I think it's amazing that you deleted all of that, right? Like, why would you keep that trigger? But we've got to understand what is really deeply underneath our own inner critic if we're really going to be able to unhook ourselves from it as soon as it starts speaking. Because whether you're, I'm going to delete social media, and I'm going to do all of these external things, and that's important. These external things are important. But what we're really talking about here is your inner life. And the issue with our inner critic is our inner critic is only focused. She's focused on one of two places, okay? She's focused. Oh, my Zoom does that when my Zoom likes things that I say and sends balloons.
I would give you balloons too, because everything you're saying is so on point with being happy.
Thank you. I seriously do not know where that
it's like it's a celebration. It's using hilarious. Your hands in a big way. Yes.
It's hilarious. So the thing is, our inner critic lives in two places. Okay. Oh God, I keep saying it. My Zoom keeps liking it. Either in the dead past, right? Rehashing what happened. Oh my God, that argument I had last week, or what happened 5 years ago, or what happened 15 years ago, right? So she's either in the dead past or she's in the imagined future. And where do both of those things live?
In our
right
brain.
Up here in our heads.
Yeah.
And so now, because we've lived with this voice for so long, and she keeps going from the past to the future, back to the past. And even when we're in the present, right? When we're triggered by something in the present and we're in that anger or that fear, right? It's always connected to something that goes back to our past, right? So we're really never, like, we have glimpses of living in the present moment, but we think that we've got to keep our eye only focused on this future to get it to go in the direction that we want. And that's the very thing that actually gets in our way. We need a vision, right? We need a North Star, certainly. But when we really start to let go of all of the attempts to control all these external things so that our pain, our shame, our deep void doesn't get hit. That's what all of this is. If I keep, rehashing the past, somehow it'll help me to not make those mistakes in the future. If I keep worrying about the future, somehow it will prepare me if the shoe drops. That's what the inner critic is.
I always say, because I had this thing where things would get really good, and then I would fear the other shoe would drop. And then one day I said, both shoes are securely on my feet. There's no shoe hanging precariously over. In fact, everything is getting better and better and better and better. And that just became a new mantra for me, was that no matter how good it gets, it keeps getting better.
You may find that your inner critic sometimes brings you to that, oh my God, what if? And you can just lovingly say, okay, I see you. I see you trying to protect me. I'm just going to keep coming back to my mantra.
Yeah.
Everything just keeps getting better and better.
And that's also an imagined future.
Yes.
It's just an imagined future that doesn't create anxiety, worry, and tension in the present. Are you looking to take your happiness to another level? If you're looking to be more successful, we need to be happier, because success and happiness go hand in hand. But sometimes we get stuck in thought patterns we don't even know are holding us back. And we need a coach or a mentor to see things we can't see with our own eyes. I've had coaches and mentors help me access levels of happiness I couldn't have achieved without them. I'm now offering that same service to a small, select number of people. If you think one-on-one coaching could elevate your happiness, go to mattoneil.com and click the coaching tab to learn more. I look forward to talking with you. My primary inner critic says, you're not enough.
Right.
That's me. And it could, for other people, theirs could say other things. You're not pretty enough, or you're not smart enough, or you're not capable enough. For me, it's just, you're not enough as you are. That's like the primary language of it.
Yes. That's mine too. That's my inner critic for sure. The I step is the emotions, the body sensations, and the behaviors that we engage in when she's got us by the throat again.
And it was so interesting. I'm so glad we're talking about this step, because when we're caught by the inner critic, we don't even know we're caught. We actually think this is just what's happening. Like, life is just really scary right now. I should be worried. Things are fearful. We got all these problems, and we think it's all real.
Totally.
So what are these red light like warning signs where we can say, wait a minute, this isn't real. I'm caught by the inner critic, imaginary world of fear.
Yeah. So, those times where you come home, you're just fed up and exhausted. You just want to, maybe you want to, drink a few glasses of wine, or you want to polish off the, tub of Ben and Jerry's, or, you just want to disconnect, or maybe it's the time where you want to shout, send a nasty email to your boss,
or raise my voice at my kids.
Oh, yes. Oh, God, yes.
Yeah. Right. And while I'm eating the ice cream.
Totally. Right. So the things we do to others, the things we do to ourselves, the times, the behaviors that we engage in that are not who we truly want to be. And we keep asking ourselves, why do I keep doing this? Why can't, right? And then we try to stop the behavior, but we're putting the cart before the horse, because we need to understand first the thoughts and beliefs that lead to the emotions, because our behaviors are just a result of our emotions, right? When you say, your message is, I'm not good enough, that's the end step. The end step is neutralizing the never-ending message, right? So when you talk about, what triggers you feeling not good enough, right? We can see, oh, wait a minute, okay? Even though I'm triggered because, this part of my business failed, let's say, right?
Yeah, losing money, or for me, I run a real estate agency. If an agent changes companies, which by the way, 30% of agents change companies every year, so it's like constant triggering.
Right.
That I wasn't enough, and they have left me because I wasn't good enough, right? That's been a trigger, which also spiritual work for me. I feel like the reason I'm in the real estate industry is to overcome this inner critic and realize, of course, I'm enough no matter what they choose to do.
That's right. But you still, right? You still get the trigger
every time. Every single, even though I've worked on it at this point 100 times,
1,000,000 times,
it still shows up every time.
It does. And that's the important piece here. Okay. That's why we have the I step, because the end step, the never ending message is, you know what? I felt this so many different times in my life. I felt this at 10 when little Susie said, I don't want to be your friend.
For me, I got cut from the soccer team.
There it is.
And I felt it, right?
That's right.
My dad abandoned our family and then didn't want anything to do with my life. And I felt, what's wrong with me that my dad doesn't want to hang out with me? Like, I must be broken.
That's right.
Right. And then it showed up again in I would purposely sabotage relationships and cheat on my girlfriends. And then they would go and say, I don't want to be with you anymore. And then I would be left. But of course, I was creating the situation where they would leave.
Of course, because it's all to protect us from feeling that shame. Right? So everything that we do in our life, including, by the way, our successes. So what happens is we get into this addictive pattern where we need the successes and we need people to love us and value us and think we're fabulous.
Yes, and people pleasing, right?
Yes.
And like, I need to make sure you like me.
And by the way, right, you and I are very successful people. So success feels good. There's nothing wrong with being successful. There's nothing wrong with going for the next success. But here's the difference, okay? And this is where the D step comes in. This is design your life. When you don't need the next hit of success or the next hit of somebody loving you or valuing you, when you can sit in your current self and your current life, faults, flaws, warts, and all, and you can actually neutralize that I'm not enough message, where you can accept, you know what? I don't need to cover up my shame anymore. I can actually turn towards that shame. Oh, that real estate broker left. Here's what's showing up for me. But now I see it. Oh, there you are. You're telling me I'm not good enough. In that moment, unhooking from that allows you to consciously plug yourself into, look at how far I've come. Look at my life. Look at what I'm grateful for. From that energy, the energy of gratitude and peace and joy and fulfillment now when we're creating our next level life, that's a totally different life than creating that life from our inner critic self that says, I need the next hit of the drug so I don't feel the pain.
It's exhausting to try to control the billions of different elements in the world. It's also impossible.
Impossible.
But yeah, I find myself trying to control the whole world so that my pain doesn't get hit.
That's right.
And then so we're talking about an emotion of acceptance.
That's right.
I'm going to do everything within my power to be the best I can today, and then accept however it shows up.
That's right.
And that's a wonderful place to live. And I've come so far on this emotion of acceptance.
Yes.
For me, a belief in God has helped me tremendously.
For sure.
And saying, whatever happens, I know is for the best because God is good. And God is always looking out for my best interest. And sometimes my best interest is not being in a relationship I thought I wanted to be in.
That's right.
We don't always know that.
We don't.
But if I look back at relationships that have ended, and at the time I didn't want them to end, I'm like, oh, okay, now I see why that relationship ended. And look at the relationships that I now have that I wouldn't have if I still had that relationship. There's a Garth Brooks song that's some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. And he talks about this girlfriend he had that he really wanted to marry in high school. And like she broke his heart. And he's singing this, song, and then he goes back for a football game, a reunion at high school, and he sees his old flame that he just wished forever. He prayed for God to make her his wife, and it didn't happen. And then he looks at his wife and his children. And he said, "Oh my gosh, thank you for that unanswered prayer.
That's
if
right.
you had answered that prayer, I wouldn't have this life."
That's it.
And this is where, in the moment of disappointment, I'm just like relying that, okay, this is triggering shame. This was making me feel like I'm not enough. However, my trust in God says that it's going to be even better.
And that just creates so much freedom and so much peace because you don't have to keep worrying when's the next shoe going to drop, right? And that's how you were conditioned. Listen, being in the environment that you were raised in, you had to try and figure out when the next shoe was going to drop.
Absolutely. It was literally life and death.
Literally.
He was so big and powerful. And when he went into angry tirades, it was so scary that I was constantly trying to say the right thing, not trigger.
Wow.
Constantly trying to make sure I was on the good side. Right. Yeah. So a lot of pressure as a 5-year-old kid, and then that also becomes a superpower because I learned how to read people very well. And I learned how to make people happy really well. So that became, I became a salesperson, and this real estate sales career came from that. So there's always gifts in these things too.
Isn't it? It's amazing. Yep. And when we let go, now we can really let those gifts be what they're meant to be, right? And the letting go, this is right. The way that I, in my work, It is a moment by moment by moment catching your inner critic, unhooking from it, and plugging yourself into something else. And there are days where you have to do that 20 times in an hour. It's a muscle like anything else. And you keep working it and you keep understanding it and you keep seeing it and where you're triggered and how it's holding you back. And it's these tiny little shifts that over time, right? Like I have I have a group program that's 6 months long. So for 6 months, right? People are just making these tiny changes. And before you know it, you look back and you're like, I'm not the same human that I was, right?
Well, how could somebody get involved in that 6-month program and heal their inner critic?
Yeah. So if you go to my website, dethroningyourinnercritic.com, the best thing to do is to schedule, some time with me, but you can find out about my Mastering Your Mind program. Right now I'm enrolling for my 12th Mastering Your Mind program. And then I also in October of 2024, depending on when people are listening to this, I'm launching my first certification program. So coaches, healers, therapists, people in the self-help space can actually become mind method practitioners. So I'm really excited about that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And Joanna, this is so important. This work is everything.
Yeah. Thank
you. I agree with you. When our emotions then create our actions and then create our destiny.
Yes.
And so if we've got these really heavy, anxious, angry, frustrated emotions, we're going to have a pretty anxious, frustrated destiny. But if we can elevate into really beautiful emotional signatures, we're going to have a really beautiful destiny.
That's it. That's the key. Right. Yeah.
So it's all the work. It's the whole, it's everything we need. It's everything we need to have a happy life.
Everything. And it's ongoing daily.
And it never ends.
You're right.
That's the part of it. That's the part we started the show with. This will never go away.
Nope. But it's step by step. That's what the mind map. That's why I created it, because it's a step by step practice, a daily practice of building that muscle, and that's it. And you it sounds like you have just done a beautiful job and are continuing to do a beautiful job in just designing a magnificent life for yourself. So it's really inspiring to hear your story. Yeah. I can't wait to have you on my podcast, Dethroning Your Inner Critic, where I dive more into, how you got from where you started to where you are. It's really powerful.
Oh, it's fun, right? It's growth, this emotional growth is just, for me, it's like the spice of life. I think it's the best part of life. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing this wonderful method with us. And y'all, thank you for listening. We will see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode with Matt O'Neill.